Dear Diary.
Dear Diary.
Dear Diary, wow, today was a really hard day.
Dear Diary, I find sometimes my life can be hard.
Dear Diary, it will pass and it will be okay.
Dear Diary, I feel like today is going to be...
Shh, the Indigo Diaries. Dear Diary, welcome world to the Indigo Diaries. First, let me introduce myself like I did last week and the week before that. My name is Natasha Hickling and I'm the host of this brand new podcast, brand new times 3, the Indigo Diaries. I welcome you all Indigos to the first series and our third diary of our lives. It's the first time you're tuning in, then welcome. If it's not your first time, then welcome back. And a huge thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening. I really hope that you enjoyed today's first episode. Episode 3. I just said first episode. I mean episode 3. I lost my thought completely. And I'm not going to edit this out because that's who we are. We all have ADHD. Well, I do anyway. So, but for today, we have our special guest, Elia. Welcome, Elia.
Hello, Tasha. Thank you for having me.
Our special guest today is Elia. And I first met Elia in a support group. On a support group for Malaysia, which is where I live in Asia. We had this in the last episode, Malaysia, Asia. This episode is pretty cool as it's the first one done in person and not on Zoom. So before we begin, let me tell you a bit about her. Elia is 28 from Malaysia and she's in the middle of a crossroads right now with life in general, trying to stop herself fitting into a neurotypical box and finally allowing herself to live as who she is. So welcome, Elia.
Thank you for having me yet again.
So tell us, when were you first diagnosed?
So I said this before as well, but that wasn't recorded. So let me say that now. I'm fairly sure it was 26. As you know, we don't keep the details that well, but I'm somewhere around 70% sure that it was when I was
70 is enough. I think 70 is enough.
Sometimes 70 is all you have.
Yeah, it is literally all you have.
Right. So yeah, I was diagnosed. Should I go into my diagnosis story now?
Yeah, you go wherever you need to go.
Okay, well, I could do that because I think I have a pretty, I don't know if it's atypical, but well, hopefully if you have something similar as I do, you'd be able to relate. So as we all know, ADHD is a lifelong sort of condition. So I've always had it, but as it is in Malaysia, you don't really get diagnosed early. A lot of the people that I know who have ADHD in Malaysia would tell me that they only found out maybe 2 to 3 years ago. So maybe that was just a thing recently.
Wow. So do you think that's been like a recent change in Malaysia?
I don't know if it's recent because I do know there were people with ADHD who were diagnosed much earlier, but maybe it's more recent that there's this sort of knowledge that there's more than one type of ADHD, which is, the hyperactive boy. Yeah.
Yes, the myths of ADHD.
The myths of ADHD.
The most frustrating thing in the whole world, and I'm sure most people can agree.
Yeah, and I don't want to diminish, hyperactive boys who do have ADHD because you still exist and your way of being ADHD is very valid, but there is a broad spectrum of it, in fact, and yes. I happen to represent one side of the spectrum that's not the hyperactive boy.
Okay.
I used to get into a lot of trouble, but I was relatively quiet in school because I was always scared of authority.
Yeah, there's something about authority with us, isn't there?
Yeah, we don't do well with authority. We either hate them or we fear them. There's no in between.
Yeah, it's a bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah. So I always wanted to be, someone who did well in school. All the Asian stereotypes, you did well in school, you behave well. And a lot of my siblings were relatively a lot more well-behaved than I was, even though I think it's a bit unfair because I was considered like the, what's the word for it? Like the devil's child.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No, it is pretty much. It's kind of a joke here but I was seen as the devil child when I was among my siblings, but I don't think it's fair because I was still considered like a nice I was a relatively well-behaved kid when I was a kid. It just so happened that my siblings are all nerds. So
why do you think they called you that?
Well, part of it is because I wasn't able to pray 5 times a day. Like, it's very obvious that I couldn't pray 5 times a day.
Okay.
So, for your information, legally, I'm Muslim. So back when you're a kid, that's what they would tell you to do. And I wasn't able to. And now I know it's partly because of ADHD, but you kind of internalize that you were lazy and you just didn't want to, or you're not religious enough for whatever reason. So that led to that. And that helped me in the end, actually, because I internalized this whole like, oh, you're lazy, you're lazy, you're lazy. And then I kept telling myself, okay, I don't want to be lazy. So with ADHD, a lot of us, we don't have a lot of intrinsic motivation to do anything. Everything's external, right?
Yes, everything is external, and we need a lot of external things to make us motivated.
Yeah, I didn't know this back when I was a kid, and I probably wasn't creative enough to figure it out. So what I used to do as a coping mechanism, please don't do what I'm doing, by the way, was I would kind of like collect all the feelings of self-hate that I would have for myself, kind of like chuck them in a ball. And if you do that for long enough and with enough, dislike for yourself, eventually you build the intrinsic motivation that you lack when you have this sort of condition. So I did that, and I didn't do too well at school for, I guess, life reasons, but I did pretty good in uni. And when I say I didn't do well in school, I don't mean I failed anything. This is just all Asian standards, by the way. So, but I did really well in uni. And because in uni I had more self-hate maybe versus back when I was in school, perhaps. So it worked for me for a long time. And I did remember thinking to myself that, wow, adulthood is really stressful. But it wasn't actually adulthood, was it? It was just
the ADHD.
It was just the coping skills. So again, it's not a really good skill. I keep trying to call it a skill. It's not a skill.
But it's a skill that got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So in a way, I don't begrudge it, because someone that I really respect did mention to me that you can't resent things that kept you alive. Even if it wasn't a healthy coping mechanism, it got me to learn everything that I needed to learn to get to where I am today. And even though I'm at some sort of crossroads, I'm pretty well off, I think, compared to a lot of people with ADHD who might be listening to this. I'm doing quite well. And in a way, like, I hated myself so much, because it was probably, I could have been happy sort of thing, and that bothers me somewhat. But at the same time, I don't begrudge it for keeping me alive all this time.
I think that's a really amazing thing, because I think a lot of us, speaking for myself and my experience, is a lot of people, they still hold that regret and that, of being, I wish I could have been that child, and still kind of mourn what we didn't have. And I really like that, even though it was hard for you, and even though, you did use this coping mechanism, which I can only even imagine was really internally a struggle, has actually helped you in a positive way to get to where you are. And I think it's really nice that you don't always look in the past.
I think I'm almost like too optimistic sometimes, maybe, because I keep telling one of the more positive coping skills that I have is I keep telling myself, there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow could be better than yesterday.
Yeah, very true.
Today might suck, but tomorrow might suck a little bit less, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, that is it. So what made you go to the doctor and get a diagnosis?
All right, that's what we were talking about.
It does not matter. It does not matter. It goes wherever. But my question to you is, did you go, or did someone make you go? Did you know you always had it, or?
So I didn't even realize that I was depressed, because I thought everyone was the same baseline level of stress that I was, and that adulthood just really, really, really sucks.
Imposter syndrome.
Well, yeah, apparently that's imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
I didn't
who
know.
knew?
Yeah, wow. So it got to a point where obviously a lot of these feelings eventually need an outlet, because if you keep doing it, the ball keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I guess it burst at one point, and the needle on the haystack was my mom saying something relatively not, it wasn't even that bad really. I kind of don't want to go into it because it's a bit embarrassing.
No, it's
But
okay.
yeah, she said something only slightly hurtful, and that sent me into a, well, trigger warning here, but a suicidal spiral. Basically, there was this really angry, loud voice, probably the self-hate that I've cultivated and nurtured all
Over
these
the
years,
years,
to
yeah.
kind of like, was like screaming in my head. Is like, well, it said something along the lines of, why don't you kill yourself and then prove her wrong? I don't remember what she said
Oh, wow.
that much anymore, but it was like, kill yourself and then prove her wrong. So I think I was a bit hurt because she said something that implied that she didn't care. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and the build-up of everything over the years.
Maybe. So
It's a
it was
trigger.
like, yeah, so it was like, kill yourself and then now she cares sort of thing. And I knew it was an irrational thought. And usually I'm able to kind of like, yeah, no, that's ridiculous. And then you kind of move on with your life. But this one, I guess, was the needle that broke the whole haystack, I guess.
Yeah.
No, the camel's back. That's
The camel's back, yeah, that's the right one.
That's the
So
one.
this was the one, the camel's back, the pillow, whatever it was.
Whatever, yeah, so that was it. And then something broke, and it was either I did the thing or I called someone. And I think I was lucky that I called someone. It was the number called Befrienders, which is the suicide hotline in Malaysia.
Okay, wow.
And apparently I was really lucky that when I called them, they picked up, because sometimes that's the case here. There's not enough volunteers.
Oh, wow,
So
you were very lucky.
I was very lucky. So you could be in like probably the hardest place in your life, and you could call them and no one's available to pick up. And luckily someone did. And it was that person who told me to, hey, maybe see a therapist.
Wow.
So I saw a therapist, and I think for 6 months or so, we had to work through the ball of self-hate that I cultivated in myself.
Yeah, there's usually a lot more to it before you get the diagnosis. You've got to work through it, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. So we didn't know about ADHD at the time. So I think about 6 months afterwards, when I vaguely mentioned that, okay, now that I don't have this like depression and anger, I can't work anymore. And somehow that helped her to kind of pinpoint that, wait, do you have ADHD?
Okay.
So she linked me up to her friend who happened to be a psychiatrist. And I already had issues with getting diagnosed before, because this was back when I was 26. Back when I was 19, I actually did take a test for fun. You're on the internet, you got nothing better to do.
Yeah, we always do those online free surveys, especially on Facebook.
Yeah. Do I have a split personality? Do I have depression? Do I have anxiety? Just for fun. So I took one where like, oh, do you have ADHD? And it said highly likely. And then I started reading up all the symptoms, and I'm like, wow, maybe I do have it.
This is me.
Yeah. So I was convinced that I had ADHD. I begged my parents to take me to a psychiatrist because I had no money.
Yeah, you're 19. You're at uni. I get it.
Yeah. So I had no money. I'm like, I suspected it since I was 18 because that's when I took the test.
Okay.
But 19 when I failed that particular, I guess, foundation year.
Okay.
Was when I was like, okay, this is serious. I'm gonna tell my dad I have it. So he takes me to a psychiatrist. And the guy's kind of a douche. I don't know if I'm allowed to say douche.
It's fine. In my episode, I said worse, so you can say whatever.
Okay, cool. So he was a bit of a douche. Douchebag even. And I felt like he was one of those people who did not believe that ADHD is a thing because I was already an adult. 19 is technically an adult.
Yeah, I feel like that's a theme that goes on in lots of people. How can you have it? You're an adult.
It does kind of suck when it's a psychiatrist who does that.
Who's someone that's meant to be trained,
right? Yes,
it does, and it hits you hard.
So I believed him, and he told me that I had bipolar disorder because of all the depression.
Oh wow!
So he told me that I had bipolar disorder, and like I remember the weirdest thing, and the thing that annoyed me the most was it was like I think my second session with him after he misdiagnosed me with bipolar disorder. I'm fairly sure he gave me lithium, made me feel like crap. I was probably not that depressed. I have some sort of like high functioning depression apparently.
Okay.
So the lithium that he gave me kind of took the high functioning part out of the depression.
Okay.
And then just left me with depression.
Great. So with this medication, just for our viewers, was that for the obviously the misdiagnosed bipolar?
Bipolar, yeah. I'm fairly sure lithium is a mood stabilizer.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too sure because I didn't look it up. I'm fairly sure this is like my psychiatrist telling me, explaining it to me years later, because he gave me those meds, but he didn't really tell me what they were gonna do. I remember.
So at 19, he just gave you this diagnosis and gave you the meds.
Yeah, he did that, and it's like, okay, come back in a month.
Oh wow. Okay.
So did that. The next time I went back, like 1 month later, there was I'm not sure who they were, but they seemed young, so they were probably like psych students in lab coats. He was sitting down at his little psychiatrist desk. These 3 students were stood behind him, arms folded, leaning against the wall and just staring at me. I didn't say anything the entire time I was talking. So
in the diagnosis,
like this is after the diagnosis. But
oh wow!
I was supposed to have gone back to kind of confirm whether the diagnosis was correct or not, because you take the meds. If you have bipolar, you feel better, right? Yeah. So they were just there, and I don't remember what happened because I just remember them staring at me, not saying anything. It was extremely awkward. And I think at one point the doctor left to maybe get my prescription or something for 5 minutes or so. And
these people were just in the room?
Yeah, so it was just me sitting down, staring up at these 3 young people in lab coats with their arms crossed, staring back at me.
While you were having a real kind of intimate talk with your doctor about bipolar meds. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
I mean, obviously I think I just felt really awkward.
Yes. Oh my, quite awkward anyway.
So I tried to chat them up, just kind of like, hey, so are you guys tired just standing like that? And then they didn't even nod at me. That really pissed me off. That's what I remember. They didn't even respond. Maybe they're not allowed to, but it's also like later on when I actually got diagnosed by my psychiatrist, I mentioned this, and that's partly why I didn't trust psychiatrists. So my therapist, who I spent 6 months with, had to kind of convince me that, okay, don't worry, I trust him. He's really good with ADHD. He'll tell you if you have it or if you don't, which is, okay, that helped because, after 6 months, you do build some trust with him.
Yes, you do, yeah.
So I did, after I established that, okay, you know what, I can probably trust this guy. And after he told me that I did have ADHD, I kind of told that story. And then my psychiatrist, who I still see now, mentioned that if anyone's going to be in the session with you, they need to ask for consent.
Yes, apparently. They do. Yeah, that's the law in a lot of places.
Yeah, so I don't remember this guy's name, but I could have gotten him sued.
Do you think, just a question, do you think if you'd had your doctor that you have now back then, you might have been diagnosed?
Yeah. So a lot of what I have to get over is not the childhood that I didn't have. I mean, I had to do a lot of work to kind of like, make peace with that. But I think it was much harder for me to get over between 19 and 26.
Yeah, and that's understandable.
Yeah, because I knew what I had. I took a test, I read up about it, and I was like, okay, I have this. I went there, I told him ADHD, and then he gave me a completely different diagnosis, which didn't work, which wasn't correct. And because of him and because of how weird that experience was, I didn't understand why it was weird, because, we have a bit of issue with social cues sometimes.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was weird. I knew it was wrong, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So
the problem is you were vulnerable at 19, still very young, and you went asking for help.
Yep.
And it was the wrong help.
Unfortunately. And I think it was also the first time that I've really, really failed ever in my life. Because obviously we've all failed before, but there's all the big moments in your life, like big exams and stuff. And I've always at very least done above average because I kill myself to do that.
Yeah, they don't think about what you do after hours, do they?
Yeah. I mean, they see like, okay, she's like, people would tell me that I'm smart but lazy, but since you're smart, you earn above average. And I just kind of internalized that, I'm lazy without realizing that I go home and I work like crazy.
Hours, but just not in the way that
Yeah, because I studied smart. I never did homework. I just studied what I didn't know.
Oh, wow.
Because when you do homework, you have to do everything, right?
Yes.
But if you ignore the homework and you just study whatever that you're not too sure about, you get smart faster.
I love that. So everybody, ignore the homework. We did not tell you this.
Again, please do as I say, not as I do. all not very recommended.
But it got you where you are today. So
It did.
So you kind of stole kind of 9 years of your life, really.
Yeah, I remember crying about it. I remember going up to my friends and crying about it, and like I don't regret that my parents didn't take me there, because I forgave them for that. Honestly, it's a very hard decision, but I decided that, well, if my parents knew what I had, and if they knew that they could have gotten help for it, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So I forgave my parents for that because it was out of ignorance. But
Wow.
this guy, he should have known.
Yes, he should have known, because he's qualified.
Yes.
I'm doing qualified with inverted commas, because qualified means not a lot sometimes.
Yeah, and unfortunately in Malaysia, it's still the case. Even legitimate like people who should have known better would think to themselves like, oh, this person wasn't diagnosed when they were a kid, so they must not have it, because if they did, they would have gotten diagnosed, which is not always the case, right?
No, it's not always the case, but it's a big thing here.
Yeah, it's a big thing here, and it really breaks my heart to see that it's still a thing with kids today.
Yes, it is still a thing, and especially for you who's grown up here and is here like as an adult, and you've been through all this, and you think, wow, well, when I was a child, when you were a child, there might have not been that, advocacy, but now there is a lot more, but there's still not, it's still, they're going through the same process that you probably went through.
Yeah, and it really sucks because it's probably been like at least a decade, right? And it's still happening.
Yeah.
And that really bothers me.
Yeah.
So I hopefully, if I can figure it out, I'll try to see what I can do about that. Because one thing I will say that is good about my ADHD that I don't completely hate at this point is I'm passionate about stuff, and part of me being at these crossroads and trying to be truer to myself is also being true to my passions. So if I find myself being passionate about making sure that no other kid in Malaysia goes through what I went through growing up, then I realized that I could do something about it, and I'm figuring it out. I still haven't figured out how exactly, but I'm gonna try my best to see if I could end the cycle.
And the trying that's the first step. So you used to be a writer.
Yes, well, I'm still technically a writer.
Yeah, still technically. I say used to. You could probably like not gonna stop. You don't write anything anymore. No post. No.
No, not even Facebook posts. Like, screw Twitter. That's writing. That's too much.
Oh no, that's too much. I agree. It's too complicated for me. So, tell us about this writing.
Okay, so well, I've always been pretty good at picking up languages ever since I was a kid. That was something that always came naturally to me.
Okay.
I could even like just watch a couple of anime because I was a nerd back in school, so don't come at me. I was a fucking nerd. I watched a lot of anime, watched a lot of Japanese dramas.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I learned enough to be like, I part-timed in Starbucks, and I was able to converse with all the Japanese tourists. So it always came easy to me. So back in school, I even like when I was in primary school, which is kind of like I guess before you're a tween. Yeah. I never figured out what a noun, verb, and adjective was. Because you would there'd be blanks for you to fill in.
Yes.
So I would just fill in whatever sounded the most correct without really understanding why it's correct.
Yeah, you kind of just did enough. It's a bit like wearing a mask, isn't it? You kind of just did enough to get by.
Yeah.
Without really
But I always got it correct because I think I knew those rules instinctively. I just didn't know them,
to explain them or actually more in depth and apply them in different ways.
So I was technically already a professional writer when I actually finally learned what a noun, verb, and adjective was.
What are they? No, I'm joking.
No. I'm not a writer anymore. So I wrote for 5 years. This is a bit of a brag, but I think I'm a bloody good writer. I think I'm really good at, I think because of the hyper focusing, which is probably what helped my career somewhat. I was able to kind of like read from a lot of different sources and then turn it into like really simplified articles. Because I wrote about technology and business and stuff. So kind of like winnowing it down to something kind of friendly so people could read it.
Every person, if you didn't know about it, you could read it.
Yeah, that was the idea behind it. Those were
Wow.
the sort of publications I worked for. So that's what I did. And they would purposely give me kind of the complicated research heavy topics because they knew I could do it.
Yeah, because you're good at it, so they took everything at you.
Yeah, and I didn't mind it because I like to do that kind of stuff. I just would have liked if they gave me more time.
How much time did you have? So what was like your average time?
So this is gonna sound crazy for some people, but there was a point in I think the first company that I worked for, it was 2 articles a day.
2 a day?
2 either interviews or research or something a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you cope with that with like kind of your ADHD?
Oh, I gave them 1 article a day.
Okay.
But the goal was like, if I'm good enough at the 1 article I give them a day, they won't fire me, which worked.
Oh, that's great. That's brilliant.
So I did that. And after I joined my second company, after that guy was like, okay, no, 2 articles a day is too intense. You can give me like 3 or 4 articles if it's just like, slightly reworking press releases.
Oh, okay.
Which really helped. But then he also kind of ended up giving me more of the researchy sort of stuff because he knew that's what I liked
and what you were good at.
Yeah, so I did that, and I did and over time I built up the ability to write, hopefully in a way that was kind of interesting and friendly for people who, like, say they didn't know anything about the topic and wanted to learn. They clicked on my article, they'd be able to kind of figure it out. That was always my goal when I wrote.
That's amazing. It's kind of like already, before you even knew you had ADHD, you were kind of writing almost for people that, because it's hard, like, I mean, when you're reading like very, articles that are very technical and things like that, you kind of switch off. So you're making kind of articles for ADHD friendly almost, but for different
Now
topics.
that you pointed it out, oh my god, that's what I was doing.
Yeah, but you were doing it for topics.
Because I just thought that people who used big words without, like some people would use like 3 to 4 consecutive big words at the same time in an article.
Yeah, and then I don't know about anybody else, but I'd be on a dictionary like, what's this? What's this? Oh, they all mean the same thing.
Yeah. And frankly, I always found those sort of articles pretentious.
Me too.
Yeah. So I tried my best to not be that sort of writer. There is value in being sort of like more academic writer or whatever, but that's just not the sort of thing that I did. And I think if I did that, I would have gotten bored of writing much sooner.
Yeah.
But I guess I did that, and now I freelance. I freelanced for a year doing writing, and I kind of got to a point where I realized that I did writing because I was good at English and I was good at research. What I didn't like was the actual writing part.
Yeah. How did you kind of structure your day when you freelanced?
There was really no structure, because what I found worked is that I would have days where I could work and days where I can't work.
Okay.
And on days where I could work, I just work from morning to night. Like I would
Longer periods.
Yeah. And then on days where I couldn't work, I'd just go out shopping or whatever and then come back and see if I'm in the mood. That worked for a while, and my psychiatrist even praised me for that, because it's like because you're structuring your day based on your ADHD, right?
For you, you're structuring it for you.
Yeah, that worked for a while, but I guess maybe it has been a year since I got bored of writing. Maybe about the time I started freelancing is when I realized I didn't want to do it. So slowly, the time when I could work became less than the time that I couldn't work.
Yeah.
And that built up to a point where I was missing deadlines, and okay, this is not sustainable anymore. So I would kind of go back to that place of self-hate to push myself, because that was the only thing that worked. That worked when I started my career.
Yeah.
After I got diagnosed, kind of all the other coping skills and meds helped. And that's the thing about losing an interest when you have ADHD, is that you just really absolutely cannot do it.
Yeah, when the interest goes, people think it's an attention thing, but it's choosing the attention for the right things, and we just can't regulate our attention. There's just no attention.
No.
Which is what a lot of people think. they think they can't pay attention. No, we can pay attention, but when that interest goes, we can't.
Yeah, and I remember I was lying to myself, because I told myself, you're a really good writer, and frankly, I was earning quite a lot of money for where I am in my career. So I kept on telling myself that, I convince, like, I do a lot of that. I convince myself that I like something that I don't, because hopefully I could, if you gaslight yourself long enough.
Yeah, you start to believe it. And do you feel like, now, like, you're starting to kind of in that crossroads?
Yeah.
Is it worth the money?
I mean, I have enough set aside to buy a house if I wanted to, so that's nice. I may be at a similar place where I don't regret what kept me alive, perhaps.
Oh no, I mean moving forward.
Yeah.
So, like, is it been, because obviously you're choosing now whether to write or not, and is your thought about the money or no?
Not really. Frankly, if they gave me because when you kind of go from one job stream to another, you kind of have to start from scratch. I mean, I'd love it if I didn't starve.
Yes, obviously, yeah.
But that's pretty much it, really. Because maybe this is a lot of cockiness, but I think I'm ambitious enough at whatever I do that if I do it, I could get to a similar point that I am now, but hopefully more sustainably. I'm kind of like, I don't mind where I start so long as I eventually get there.
And I think that's not cocky at all. That's realistic, and that's actually the opposite of self-hate. Because you're self-loving yourself. And we're going to finish there for the break.
Okay.
Of the talk of self-love. And we'll come back after the break and we'll carry on talking about where Elia goes next after writing. I'm excited, even though I do know, but shh. If you would like any information on Indigo's support group, check out the website below for our link to our Facebook page, or email at indigo.adhd2020@gmail.com. If you would like to offer any comments or feedback, or if you are interested in the world hearing your story, then please reach out, either through the group or through our email. As said before, have a good week. Check in again later, Indigos. Shh, the Indigo Diaries. Right, before the break, we were talking about self-love. We've gone from self-hate to self-love.
Hi again, everyone.
And I was just about to get there. Oh, she's got in there. So we're back with Elia. If you didn't join us before the break, then I don't really know why. Go rewind now. So Elia is here, and she was just discussing about how she's gone from self-hate to self-love with her writing. So, and now what everyone's been waiting for, or what I've been waiting for, what happened after the writing?
Well, first of all, yeah, there's not going to be any more writing. Ideally, I would get myself to a place where I would do no other writing except for shit posting on Facebook. That is the plan. That is the goal. Because here's the thing, and this is something it took too long for me to kind of figure out. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you have to do it, right?
Yes.
So the reason that I kept trying to convince myself that I was good at writing and that I needed to write because that's what you're good at is because, like, yeah, I'm good at it and I can do it. And I've been told by a lot of people that they learn like interesting new words for me because that's one of my interests. I like to learn weird, obscure words. It's really fun. So what's interesting is obscure is an obscure word here.
Yeah, it is obscure, yeah.
So I like that kind of stuff. So I kept telling myself that if you're good at it, you have to keep doing it. But yeah, you're just forcing. In the end, you're killing yourself like day by day, step by step, till eventually I got to a point where there was nothing left and I had nothing left to give.
And people with ADHD, I don't know about anybody else, but our attention lies where we're interested. And if that goes, then what's the point?
Yep. So before I get into what I'm going to do next, I guess one thing I do want to put out there is if you find yourself being somewhere that you don't want to be, but you're not sure what to do next, sometimes just take that leap first, then eventually you'll figure it out. Sometimes it's just how it is with us. You have to get the safety net out for you to finally let your kind of creativity soar, I guess, in a way.
You have to risk it.
Yeah, you have to risk it. And what I'm going to do is actually a pretty big risk. I'm very scared. I fluctuate everywhere between like, this is the greatest thing I'm ever going to do, to this is horrible.
Like a roller coaster, like
Yeah.
yes, no, yes, no.
But yeah, I've never I'm still in the middle of the roller coaster and
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to do well or not. But yeah, okay. So you're listening to a podcast. What I'm launching is going to be another podcast.
This is awesome.
So I thought about it a lot because a lot of people kept telling me that you should do a podcast, but I didn't want to start a podcast until I could think of something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, you've got to have that passion in order to keep it going and not more than just one episode.
Yes, exactly. But, like even more than that, I kind of wanted to figure out something that that I'm passionate about, B, something that actually adds value to the world.
Yeah.
I don't want to just talk about I don't want to just be that sort of podcaster who just kind of follows trends.
Yeah, and just talks about today I did this.
Yeah, like I don't want to be a vlogger because I don't watch vlogs, so I don't want to make vlogs, you know.
I also don't watch vlogs and won't ever be a vlogger.
True. The podcast is called Are You Crazy? ? What's the other? I forgot the word. Damn it, because I'm bilingual, so I forgot the word for it in English. Question mark and tanda seru. What's that?
Oh, exclamation mark.
Exclamation mark. Thank you. See, this is bilingual problems. So yeah, it's called Are You Crazy? ? Exclamation mark. It's a question because the answer is no, you're not crazy.
I love that. So tell us more about this. It's very exciting.
All right, so you guys know my diagnosis story. So I'm thinking I wanted to launch a podcast about mental illness from the perspective of the mentally ill.
I think that is very powerful. What better way to talk about it than you, someone that's experienced them themselves?
So like topics that I had in mind would include like, you know, what to expect when you go to therapy for the first time, kind of like a plea, or like I haven't figured out the title yet, but kind of a plea to Malaysian parents to like, if you suspect that your kid has something and if they get diagnosed, it's not the end of the world. So like, please get them help, because it's better if they have that label and get diagnosed as a kid and, you know, have the blueprint to grow up to be a functional person versus growing up thinking they're normal like I did, because I thought everything was normal and realizing it's not, and then having to figure out how to be a person at 28. It bloody sucks.
Yeah, and it would have took off a lot of strain internally.
Yes, it would have. I would have known that I was really not lazy, because I kept telling myself that I'm lazy, but my friends like had to tell me that no, you actually overwork yourself. You are the opposite of lazy.
We are literally the opposite of lazy.
Yeah. And here's the thing, this is not an isolated incident. A lot of you listening to this right now who may also have ADHD might think that you're lazy or you're not good enough or whatever, but you are not actually lazy. You probably try harder than everyone out there for mediocre results. It fucking sucks, right?
Yeah, and you try and you're like, yes, I've done this, and then they're like, C, what? C, and everyone, there's some people like A, you're like, what? I spent 7 hours last night trying to scrap it all together.
Yeah, see, if you worked as hard and you had a neurotypical brain, or the world was better designed for someone with ADHD, you would probably have gotten that A as well.
Yeah, which is probably what you deserve if it's an effort.
So that's part of self-love, I think. I'm trying to learn how to reward myself in terms of how much effort I put in.
Yeah, I agree.
Versus how much, you know, like how much you fit the neurotypical standard, which is probably like, you know, taking out of the putting into the neurotypical box thing. So my psychiatrist has been advocating for this basically since I started seeing him, but I didn't really do it because it seemed a bit silly to me.
Yeah.
So what he would say is, if you have put in a lot of effort, even if you don't see a lot of result, give yourself a spa day or something. Just like actually give yourself a reward for whatever you're doing so that you are more likely to do it, because we do things based on interest. So if you keep punishing yourself, which is what I started doing with writing near the end of my career, so that I would kind of like rag myself for not doing it and not being able to do it. And the more you yell at yourself for not being able to do it, the less you're going to want to do whatever you're yelling at yourself to do.
Exactly.
And it's a horrible cycle, and then you'll never be able to like it again, which sucks, because I'm good at writing and I can't do it anymore because I kind of yelled it out of myself.
Just think, even though you're not writing and even though you're still kind of figuring out what you're doing, the effort that you did to change that is the success itself.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. So I'm basically putting everything on the line. I have also, while I'm trying to get the podcast up, because my aim is to monetize it within a year.
Wow,
That's a lot, but I think I could be able to do it because, yeah, I don't know. I have a plan. I have a strategy book and everything, so it's gonna happen.
Brilliant.
But yeah, in the meantime, to make money, I am hopefully gonna edit crappy romances. Crappy romance chapters.
Tell us more about this. I absolutely love this. Tell us more.
All right, so there's a lot of web novels going on right now, from China, or at least Chinese speaking countries, where it's basically just really crappy soap operas, because all these stories would be going on for hundreds and thousands of chapters. How much is there to write about a romance for like 1,000 chapters? That's
1,000?
More than that. Some of them have gone on for like up to 2,000 to 3,000. It's insane.
My mouth, no one can see me, but my mouth is open right now in shock. How can anyone focus for that 1,000?
To be fair, like, there's really no standards. They can write whatever they want. So you could like, I know there's at least this one story where it's a sci-fi story, but for some reason, somewhere down the line, they introduced like actual biblical angels. Like, first of all, why are there biblical angels outside of Earth? And second, like, why is it in a sci-fi story, but it was like probably 500 chapters ago? I don't know how it happened, but you come into editing the chapter where angels are already just a thing in the story. So, like, it's almost like an ideal thing to write, really. Whatever you fancy at the moment, just put it in your story. Who cares?
So, you mentioned earlier that you run a Malaysia group. Obviously, I know this because this is where we actually met. So, when I started Indigo, I went on to this. I couldn't find a Malaysian group because I wanted to find support here. And then I clicked on and I found Elia. So tell us about that, and kind of, because it kind of goes hand in hand with your new vision.
Mm-hmm. So here's an interesting story, because this kind of episode of this podcast kind of is probably turning into Elia complains about ADHD in Malaysia. But here's the story of why I decided to start the Malaysian group, because I've always so I don't have anyone else in my life who is also ADHD.
Okay.
My parents don't have it, my siblings don't have it. If my cousins have it, I don't know. So when you find out that you have this thing that kind of changes your entire life, you kind of want to find someone you'll be able to connect to with, right?
Yes, relate.
Yeah, just like I love my friends and they've done a lot for me, but it's really annoying when I talk to them. I have to kind of backtrack and give them context.
Explain, yes. Oh, it's so frustrating. Like, come on, you should know this, but no, they shouldn't know that.
So it would, and when you talk about other stuff, you could just tell them like, oh my God, my boss is a bitch.
Yeah, and they get
like,
it.
Oh my God,
yeah.
So it would be really nice if I could have that, with someone else.
Yeah.
So that's why partly why I thought of starting the group, but what made me actually finally start the group is when I actually tried to buy insurance.
Insurance?
Yeah. So I still don't have a medical card.
Okay.
And at 28, it's irresponsible, but what is ADHD if not being irresponsible, right?
Yes, very much that.
So I was trying to be responsible, like how hard this was for me at the time to
yes, I can imagine.
Finally start, okay, you know what, I need to get a medical card. Mm-hmm. So I applied, and then at the time I was still on Concerta because now I'm taking a different medicine.
Okay.
So at the time I was on Concerta, and the insurance lady called, and when she talked to me, it seemed like it was pretty easy to get. Apparently, okay. I was relatively young. I didn't smoke. I exercise. So like, yeah, you get it pretty easily. And then she asked me if I took any medicine. She just assumed that I didn't. And I was kind of like, okay, you know what? Just mention that I do take this medicine called Concerta. And I don't need it every day technically because I didn't take it on the weekends at the time. But okay. I have it and I take it quite often. And she asked me how long I was going to keep taking it, probably assuming it was like a week or two because, you get over a fever, you take meds for a week.
Yeah, like antibiotics, yeah.
Yeah, so she thought that, but I'm like, pretty much indefinitely. So she hung up on me.
What?
No, I mean, she hung up nicely. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say she hung up on you.
No, she told me that she needed to ask her, what's the word for those, those insurance
managers, yeah.
Underwriters, sorry. Yeah, she had to ask an underwriter about ADHD apparently. So it took an hour. She called back and she told me, and I was here thinking like, I don't mind telling people that I have ADHD or whatever. And if I have to pay higher premiums, I was willing to.
Yeah.
Just because like, I don't want any issues to arise if I do need to end up making claims, right?
Yes, it's better to say it out loud in front.
Yeah, so she called back and she told me because of my ADHD, they see it as a pre-existing condition, which it sounds weird. And because of that, they can't even offer me a plan at all.
Wow.
So, and I didn't know that, and it sounded really ridiculous, right?
It does sound ridiculous.
So you're telling me that had I tried to get this insurance, if I was irresponsible, I got diagnosed, and I think that's a responsible thing to do, right? If I was being irresponsible and I purposely didn't get diagnosed, and if I applied for an insurance plan, I would have gotten it. But because I am being more responsible and I'm taking meds, which reduces the likelihood of me getting into accidents or falling off a cliff. I have almost fallen off balconies. I can't tell you how many times because I was messing around on it. This was pre-medication. I don't do these things anymore. So if I was being irresponsible and not getting treated for it, that gives me a higher chance to get a medical card versus me being responsible. Because if I'm taking meds, that means I'm much less likely to crash my car. So they would...
And you're getting penalized for being an irresponsible adult. I
know. So that really pissed me off. Yes. So I'm like, okay, you know what? There needs to be a space where we discuss this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I found a few groups for ADHD in Malaysia, but either they were inactive or, I found out that I had issues with them later on. But at the time, my only issue with them was when I scrolled through it, most of it was parents asking for help for their kids.
Yeah, that's usually the case.
And I mean, that's great, but I don't want to join a group and then just keep seeing posts about parents asking about their kids.
Or teachers,
Yeah. So I decided to start a Malaysian group for adults.
Wow.
As also partly because I feel like a lot of people don't know that ADHD is a lifelong condition. You don't just get over it, but for some reason people think you turn 12 and then you're healed.
Yeah, or for some reason you can sit still for a minute so you don't have it, or hyperactivity, you grow out of it.
My thing as a kid was that I didn't fail school, so therefore I didn't have it.
That was me as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, right, after meeting so many ADHD people in the world, a lot of us actually overperform because you spend your life being told you're lazy or whatever. You try to prove yourself.
Imposter syndrome.
And academic success, because there's a structure for it. It's easy to do. You know what to do next. So it's pretty easy for you.
Usually after school.
Yeah, it's usually after school that you kind of which is also what happened.
Yeah.
So that's why I started the Malaysian group. This was a little more than a year ago.
Wow.
And right now it's almost 80 people strong. And that's great because I'm the only admin now, and I don't know if I can handle a lot more people kind of posting in the group. But what I really like is I didn't even have to actively, I didn't have to do a lot of very strong arming in the group.
Yeah.
A lot of people came in and they were immediately respectful and kind to everyone and encouraging. And I'd like to take credit for that. Maybe the post that I put up before anyone else could post kind of set a precedent. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, you set kind of the mood and the environment of it, and then people go with that.
So I like to take credit for that, but I don't know. I mean, frankly, a lot of the people in the group are really cool. I've started bi-monthly. We had a vote and everyone agreed that bi-monthly is the most that they could commit. So let's do that. Bi-monthly kind of Zoom sessions. I'm gonna have first kind of a physical meetup soon. We've decided it's gonna be a picnic. Location will not be disclosed here because we don't want any stalkers. But...
No one's allowed in Malaysia with I'm not even going to say the word what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah, the thing.
Yeah, the thing. So talking to a fellow facilitator, how which is rare. It's funny because when you find people with ADHD, you're like, yes. And then when me and Elia found each other, we're like, yes, fellow facilitator. How are you finding it?
I think I almost take too much responsibility over it, maybe because when I started the group, it really was just a space. I just wanted ADHD friends, and I just wanted to talk about it. And I thought it would be like a cool little group for everyone to hang out. But then as the group got bigger, I started feeling the sense of responsibility. So like if someone posted like something about how they're feeling depressed, I told myself that I can't just let that post go without a comment.
You have to kind of,
And while you're commenting anyway, because you have that little admin badge next to you.
Yes, you do, yeah.
It becomes like, okay, how do I, like, you are at the end of the day at some sort of position of authority, and maybe I'm reading into it and taking it too seriously, but I feel responsible for everyone in there. Their problems become my problems, and even when they message me outside of the group to get help with diagnosis or just they had a bad day or whatever, I feel obligated to answer them. And this is not to say that I hate doing it, because I think as we've established, if I don't like it, I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't have kept it for this long.
Yeah, so I do like it, but there is a sense of pressure behind it.
All I'm going to say is, from a fellow facilitator, I understand completely. I mentioned that maybe we should set up a support group for facilitators of support groups. I think we need a support group for this, but it's kind of like, I find, because I found that I don't open up. I'm not an extroverted person. I have the hyperactive tendencies, but I'm not very extroverted. So I found it hard, like, because I'm a teacher, felt like almost that, I can't open up because I'm like the one that's got to kind of be
somehow
there. Yeah.
I mean, I'm better at it now because, self-love.
You get used to it, don't you, as well? Yeah.
I'm better at it now. So when I was feeling really down a few weeks ago, I actually did open up within the group and everything, and it's good. Wow. But there was a phase where if I felt bad, I felt like I couldn't post it in the group because I needed to be some sort of pillar of strength. No one told me to do it, but I just took it on myself because, hey, I'm an admin. Because I just happened to be the schmuck who started a page on Facebook. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know, but I'm going to say ADHD plays a huge part in that.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was someone would say something or have a bad day and I'd be like, oh, it's me. And it's that RSD. If any of you don't know what that means, that's rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there. We're getting better. And for now, the facilitator support group at least has 2 members.
So if anyone's a facilitator out there, I think we've got another one coming on. But if anyone's a facilitator, let us know. Start our own facilitator support group. But then I don't know who would facilitate it. Maybe Noah. So we've got a few more minutes. So before we go, is there anything else?
Is there anything else? I basically use this session to complain about how ADHD is like in Malaysia. And I really hope this goes viral because people need to know that this is a problem. So there's also that. I don't know. What else is there? We've talked about my crossroads. Ironically, it's not really a crossroad because I've decided what I wanted to do. I'm just nervous about doing it.
Why do you think that is?
Well, fear of failure. Because I see myself, this is not great, and I am trying to work it out of myself, but I see myself quitting writing as some sort of failure. I talked about this with my friends, and what I realized is after I got diagnosed and everything, and I was already good at my job by the time I got diagnosed, a part of me felt a sense of pride because I was doing really well at a neurotypical thing. I know it doesn't make sense.
An expected kind of, I don't want to say the word, but kind of like. So it's weird, but I've always felt the sense of pride because I was excelling at something that neurotypicals wouldn't expect an ADHDer to excel at. Yeah. Like, oh, you're writing. How can you be a writer when you're ADHD? And I'm like, yeah, I know, right? It's fucking great. I'm awesome. You can actually sit there? What?
Yeah, I know. I'm fucking awesome. So it's great. I can do this sort of thing. So I kind of held on to that sense of pride. Yeah. And that may have partly been why it was so hard to let it go. Yeah. And but the thing is, when I became a writer, and it's been this way for 5 years, because I took so much pride in it, maybe I wouldn't allow myself to do anything if I haven't done the writing bit first. And when you put that sort of pressure on yourself, procrastination gets worse.
Yes, it really does.
Yeah, so there would be days where I would do nothing but procrastinate writing and then write at night. And that has been a thing for 5 years. So I am at a place where career-wise, I would consider myself really successful for where I am. I don't hang out with my friends enough. I don't have a relationship, not because I'm unattractive, because I think I look okay, but I just don't give myself the opportunity to date.
Okay.
Or I don't spend enough time with my family. So all I had was writing. So when I realized that I couldn't write anymore, this is a trigger warning again, but yeah, first thing I thought of was, okay, if I can't write anymore, I might as well kill myself, because that was the only thing I had going on in my life at the time. So part of me kind of like deciding not to write anymore is because actually that's not a good place to be, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the place where the only thing you have in your life is one thing.
Yes.
So whatever I do next, the podcast / whatever job that I do on the side to make money while I do the podcast, I would hope that I could do something that is more ADHD friendly. And that's not a defeat. That's not admitting defeat. That's just kind of, living a life that better suits who you are.
Yeah.
And that's not failure. And I'm still not convinced of that. I'm trying to tell myself that still. And hopefully I will actually have time for things in the future that's not just my job.
Who says that making your life ADHD friendly is wrong? Who says that living a neurotypical life is right?
Yeah.
And for me, the thing that springs out in that a lot of people, and I know firsthand, struggle with, and it's a long time, is you're looking after yourself and you're caring for who you are, not what's expected.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's a thing that we struggle with, because too often we're expected to hit a certain threshold, a landmark.
Standard.
Yeah, standard. And we don't always hit neurotypical standards. So you and you don't want to keep getting told that you are not good at things. So
not good enough, yeah.
So, self-care falls by the wayside. You don't make time for it because it's not important, but it is.
Because you are. So, wow. So, Elia, is there anything that you'd like to leave this diary with?
Well, I have been instructed by Tasha to come up with words of encouragement. So one thing I will leave everyone with is the quote at the end of every single RuPaul's Drag Race episode. Don't ask me why I like it, I just really like it. It's called, RuPaul would always say, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anyone else? And I think that's something that I'm trying to live as a person. That's what I'm trying to embody. And I hope you all will too.
Wow. So I will speak from many people out there, or whoever's listening. Thank you. Because I know for me, this has been really nice meeting you, because you're the first person I've ever met with ADHD.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
It is nice in person. I mean, online is great, but it's nice to meet someone in person. And I think it's really amazing what you're doing for Malaysia. And I really enjoyed, and I think a lot of people will find it really interesting to hear the perspective from this side of this east of the world. Yeah, well, I hope you all enjoyed that. And I hope you learned something. If just, listen to my voice, that's pretty cool too. Yeah, it is. You got a nice voice. So all I can say is thank you, Elia. And thanks all you Indigos. As said every week, thank you for joining us, and goodbye. Bye. Signing out, Indigos. See you soon. Have one hell of an amazing week. And we're out.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Dear diary.
Today is ending. I'll check in again tomorrow.
Tomorrow is a brand new beginning.
Good night, sweet dreams.
I think tomorrow will be...
Shh. The Indigo